Justin Trudeau said he wanted to give Canadians a choice, and last night Canadians chose another Liberal minority government, leaving this parliament looking a lot like the last.
Canadians have chosen a progressive plan. Some have talked about division, but that's not what I see.
But that plan will require cooperation, sending a message back to Ottawa that the work is far from over.
I hear you when you say that you just want to get back to the things you love, not worry about this pandemic or about an election. That you just want to know that your members of Parliament of all stripes will have your back through this crisis and beyond.
So was last night's win still a win for the Liberals? What does it mean for Parliament? At Issue is here for a special Tuesday post-election panel. Really, they're just on every day now, we've decided. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. Thanks. Good to see all of you here. You've all had a bit of time to sleep and reflect on the results now. And I wonder what you're thinking about today in relation to Justin Trudeau's political gamble here. Althea, I'll start with you.
It didn't work. I have spent a fair bit of time thinking about why he didn't ask the country for majority government and wondering if maybe if he had just been more plain and obvious about it, if he actually might have gotten a lot closer to that objective. I don't have a clear answer. I've spoken to a lot of smarter people than I and Liberals about this decision. It was, they thought about it and they decided that they might get punished for it. But that is something that I have been thinking a lot about. Otherwise, it's so uncanny. I don't want to say that no effort has gone into it because we're kind of pretending that this is exactly like 2019. A lot of effort went into getting the exact same result, but it's really weird.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't know if you've thought about that. That's an interesting question Althea poses there. If you had been more transparent about wanting a majority, what would have happened, I guess?
I'm not sure that would have been helpful either, but it's certainly true that there was an element of falseness at the heart of both the Conservative and the Liberal campaigns that did them in. The Conservative campaign, which we can discuss, was that, well, we've been made over into this moderate party and we don't have any of these lunatic fringes anymore. And the Liberal thing was, well, we're going to ask for a majority without ever mentioning the word majority. That we're going to say that we're going to have this huge consequential election with all these big choices and then not actually put any big choices in front of people. Nothing that he wanted to do, with the majority, he could not have done without it. And ultimately, that's, if there's a core to your campaign that just basically isn't true, ultimately that's going to come out.
Okay, Chantal, your thoughts?
If there had been a rationale beyond convenience for a majority, I'm sure the Liberals would have made that case. But in any event, if there had been a will to hand Justin Trudeau a majority to reward him for his management of the pandemic, it wasn't on offer the night before, last night. Mm-hmm. That being said, a win is a win. Yeah. You are much better off waking up in the Prime Minister's chair than the alternative. And up to a point, part of the gamble from the Liberals' perspective was either you win a majority or you win what you already have. Right. So it's not a win-lose situation. And Justin Trudeau is fortunate in the sense that he is getting a minority that is as comfortable when it comes to numbers as the previous one, in the sense that he only needs the NDP or the Bloc to get anything done. He doesn't need two parties to support him.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. But go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Well, I agree that it's better to wake up as the Prime Minister than not as the Prime Minister. I think it's probably better to wake up not having called an election that you hope to get a majority with than having done so. And basically, up until now, he had a gun he could hold to the heads of the opposition leaders. He held that gun, he pulled the trigger, and all the chambers were blank. So nobody wants an election anytime soon. But I also think this diminishes him to some extent. It shows he is not the political force he once was. I think that was clear as of 2019, but it's even clearer now. And I think it very clearly makes him a lame duck Prime Minister now. I think there's a lot of Liberals who would not like to see him take them into the next election. And I think you're seeing some of the leadership contenders already warming up in the bullpen.
Oh, I don't know about
Okay, go ahead, Althea. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree with everything Andrew said. In fact, I wrote about that last night, but I don't think that there is necessarily an expiry date on Justin Trudeau. I think that people are going to hold their fire. And if he, there were kind of two Justin Trudeaus that we saw during this election campaign. There was the Justin Trudeau of the first 2 weeks, I'd say, who looked like he wasn't really in the game. And then the Justin Trudeau that showed up towards the end of the campaign. And if that Justin Trudeau is the guy who's prime minister for the next 3 years, he may very well decide that he wants another mandate. And I don't think anybody in caucus or nipping outside of caucus would be there to stop him. That being said, he's always said that he was interested in 3 mandates, and maybe this is the last one.
Chantal.
Well, 2 things. 4 consecutive mandates, go back. You're not going to find very many 4th mandates, not without losing an election for 1, 2. Yes, but a lot of the Liberal goodwill is based on the assumption that 3 mandates is going to be it. And that at some point of his own choosing, Justin Trudeau is going to go. What I'm interested in, and the next 2 years will tell that, is whether, knowing that you are free from running or leading the party in your mind in another election, do you then turn to your legacy items and ensure that they are actually accomplished? And we will know that over the next year.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting question too, and it also leads me to ask this question that Lisa Raitt sort of put forward in our broadcast last night was, do you think that these parties will be angry or more divisive or harder to work with when the House returns, Andrew?
I think there'll be a period when there will be a simulacrum of, we've all heard the message we should work together. Everyone will try to be painting the others as the uncooperative ones. But ultimately, the usual political imperatives will reassert themselves, I don't think, before too long.
Althea, quickly, last word on that.
I was surprised that Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader, was really the only one to talk about this in his speeches in the speeches last night, by saying that he planned to reach out to all the parties to basically give them an olive branch and say he wants to work with them, including burning the hatchet with the NDP, who they've had very acrimonious relationships. I don't know that we're going to hear that from the Conservatives, but I could see the 3 other parties working closely together.
20 seconds, Chantal, you can have it.
We're going into a provincial cycle. The Conservatives are going to be interested in what happens to their government in Ontario. There's a crisis around Jason Kenney in Alberta, and the NDP has a chance of coming back. There's an election coming in Quebec where Yves-François Blanchet has an interest. Seriously, over the next year, I think the scene moves to provincial elections.
We also didn't win the trust to a level we needed in parts of the GTA, some parts of the country that we have to do better. That's why we're going to undertake a review to make sure we learn the lessons. That's what a leader does. Make sure we are prepared next time.
Conservative leader Erin O'Toole sharing his thoughts today about what went wrong for his party this election. Also, he shared thoughts about what went right, according to him. What does this mean for his future as leader? Chantal, Andrew, Althea back for another round of At Issue. Chantal, I thought his message today was like he hit the right notes, indicating what he needed to say to his own party and the things he was willing to do to review how things went. Do you think that he can convince them that he should get another try at this?
Well, it depends who them is. His first concern is to get backing from his caucus. I understand that he wants to do this sooner rather than later, and that is strategically the thing to do. Why? Because there are MPs in that caucus who actually believe it's important to continue to bring the party closer to the center. But there will also be a number of new MPs who won't be in the mood to come to Ottawa, and the first thing they do is vote against the leader who got them elected. So if he can get caucus support, it becomes harder for various factions who do want his head to come after it, because they will not have a channel to do so.
Andrew?
Erin O'Toole will try to make it out that this was just a problem of tactics, that we didn't execute well enough in the election. His critics will say, the problem is leadership. I think the party's problems are deep-seated in both of those. What you saw in this election was an attempt to kind of single-handedly drag the party in a certain direction without a great deal of consultation. It was essentially just a fait accompli. And it was sort of masked over with his own adroitness at sort of sitting on 2 sides of every issue up to a point, and then eventually it started to crack. And he was having to rewrite his platform on the fly on certain issues, certain important issues like guns, like carbon taxes, et cetera. And ultimately, that the people who've been willing to give the Conservatives a look in the early part of the campaign, I think, shrank back after that. So this is not a party even now that sounds confident in itself, sounds willing to share its full agenda with the public and trust the public to be able to support them. It's one thing to move to the middle, and that's got to be part of it. You got to be within range of where the voters are, but you also have to be able to move the voters to you. If you're not actually trying to put out something that's a little different than the other parties and trying to persuade people to your point of view, what are you in politics for?
Okay, Althea, your thoughts on whether Mr. O'Toole will be able to stay?
He will push for the adoption of the Reform Act. He pushed for this in 2019, I understand, and caucus decided not to adopt it. If they do adopt it, there probably will be a leadership review because there's definitely 25 MPs who would want to have a review. But if he, to Chantal's point, if he gets approval of caucus, if those caucus members who are very upset with him don't win, he gets to go to the members and basically argue, like, even caucus doesn't want me out. Why would you do this? Right. There are two avenues for the membership to vote him out. One, not next year, the year after. The other one is a referendum. That one might actually happen because it only needs 50,000 members to ask for it. I would say that I did not listen to the same press conference, I feel, Rosie, than you did, because I felt like he was not listening to the questions, was giving the same wooden answers that he's given throughout this entire election campaign. He was elected on the promise that he was going to grow the party in the GTA, and that's why he was focused there. But he needs to realize that he's actually lost a lot in British Columbia. They lost seats around Vancouver. I mean, there are deep problems in that party, and perhaps the alliances that they have built between the social conservatives and the nationalists in Quebec is not the alliance that they want. Maybe the alliance that they need is to come out swinging against Bill 21 and to be an urban party that respects freedom of religion, that creates different wedge issues with the Liberal Party. And there's a number of alternatives for them, but the leader does not seem to want to have those conversations.
I mean, that sounds not unlike what Andrew's saying there. Instead of just moving to the middle, find a way to get people to move towards you, which I think is a very astute. Chantal, last word to you.
Of course, if Mr. O'Toole wants to start a battle against Bill 21, he can kiss goodbye to his Quebec caucus.
Well, he has so few of them. The growth potential in Ontario is much larger.
They happen to be the most likely to support him continuing as leader.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that explains a lot of the strategy in the last election campaign. I'm just not sure if you're going to do a review, maybe you should do a full review.
So, last point on that, Chantal. If that doesn't happen this time, because I would argue it did not happen in 2019 either with Andrew Scheer, how does that party move forward?
Well, Jean Chrétien had a great line about Stockwell Day. It would help if he said the same thing from one day to the next and stuck to his positions. I think at some point it would help the Conservatives if they stuck with a leader for more than one election.
Okay, that's a good place to end it. Great conversation tonight. Thank you for being with us for many days in a row. I appreciate it. Althea, Chantal, and Andrew, thank you so much.